are?
Yeah, we're recording. So whenever you want to start.
So today I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Kleffer. He's a US and podcasting teacher here at Monte Vista. And we're going to be discussing today about Jesus in his life.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Kleffer.
Yes, sir.
What would you say the hardest part about believing in Jesus' death and resurrection is for you?
Oh, man. Nothing like coming out of the gate with a tough theological question, Aiden. Read it to me again.
Okay. The hardest part about believing in Jesus' death and resurrection.
Yeah. Maybe because I wasn't there. Like I'm old, but not that old. I think, growing up, not living in like a Christian household growing up and stuff. And I think trying to understand like this thing called faith and a creator, and you get into things like death and resurrection, and like being a person that was born with a very skeptical mind about stuff. I think for me, I had to go through a very long process of a lot of like reading and critical thinking and stuff. And it was actually a book that I still hold dear to my heart called The Case for Christ. And if you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend you or even your listeners to go check it out. It was written by a guy named Lee Strobel, who was both an investigative reporter and a lawyer. And his wife, throughout their marriage, always went to church and stuff like that. And he said, okay, finally, like I'm gonna put my investigative research skills and my lawyering skills together, and I am going to actually bring all this evidence to my wife to prove to her that this thing called Christianity is bogus. And he went on like this months-long evidence gathering, and at the end of his gathering, he had like this oh crap moment because he actually figured out like the evidence points towards a historical Jesus and the things that are written about in the Bible. And so to answer your question, to make a story long, I think for me, it's just been a very long process. And I fully confess, Aiden, that like there are times when I sit down and go like, is it really real? Like, is it really real? And I think this is being like 2,000 plus years removed from stuff, and us being in a culture that like demands video evidence and everything else, right?
Yeah.
We can very easily find ourselves there. But so for me, it was just like a long investigative process, not trusting what I was necessarily told by friends or people in church or whatever else, and just coming to that conclusion after a lot of personal study.
Yeah. When you reach those hard moments of personal reflection, how do you feel like you overcome that to strengthen your faith?
Another great question. It's tough, right? Because I think, we can take the faith part out of it. Anytime I think that our own worldviews and the things that we have convinced ourselves of, and we're confronted with things that are in contradiction to that, like we have a choice. We either have to have a bit of intellectual humility and intellectual honesty and go like, okay, I need to work through this. Or we just like shut down, run away, and like, just we're going to believe what we're going to believe no matter what. And again, that goes well beyond believing in faith. And I think for me, like it was just those moments of having those intellectual, humble moments and having to be intellectually honest and going like, oh, this clashes with my worldview. And I think that, the opposite can also be true. Like we as Christians can look at something and go like, this is what I believe. And then we can get smacked with something in real life and go like, oh, wait, does that square up with my faith? And if it doesn't negate the faith. It means like I might have to change how I'm viewing the faith and relating to the faith. So once again, it's just a process, and it's nor should it be, but it's never an easy decision to just like change your thinking on a dime.
Yeah, that was a really, really good answer.
Well, thanks.
I really appreciate it. Kind of changing base a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you feel like you display your faith through your teaching style?
Well, I hope it comes across with things like convincing students like yourself, like it's okay to fail, like there's going to be a tomorrow. I hope it comes through with my natural like love and respect for all my students. I hope it comes through in ways where if I share like a personal story, whether it's part of a lesson or just like something that I'm journeying through, then I hope that like ultimately I am doing a good enough job of like saying, and because I believe in Christ, here's how I'm dealing with this situation. It doesn't mean I'm dealing with the situation in a good way. Like I could be fumbling my way through it, right?
Yeah,
but just being transparent and honest. And I think this is the other piece. I talked to one of your history classmates, Marin, on her podcast, and And one of the things that I think that we as Christians need to do a better job of are those things like loving God, loving ourselves, and loving others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that the students that come in and out of my classroom leave by the end of the year and feel like, I may not dig history, I may not even dig Kleffer, but I know I was loved.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that's a reflection of my love for Jesus.
Personally, I definitely feel that way.
Thank you.
Every day I walk in.
Thank you.
Class.
Yay. Thank you.
Do you ever feel like you could be pushing, or do you feel like you do push your students towards Christianity? Or do you feel like you just let them figure it out on their own?
I'm always open to those extended conversations, right? But I never ever want to come off like I'm pushing in one direction. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that has to do with like my upbringing, and I never want to feel like I'm a guy that, again, it doesn't have to just be about faith. It could be like I walk into Best Buy and the dude's trying to sell me something like how bad I need the new iPhone or the new Xbox upgrade or whatever else. And the more someone pushes me towards something, the more likely I am to reject it. And so whether it's true or not, like I tend to be like that with my faith. Like I love talking about these things, and I love answering questions as best I can. But I hope to never, ever be like that guy that is pushing someone to where it's uncomfortable in a bad way.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Do you think you could describe a time in your life where Jesus' death or resurrection became like really meaningful to you?
Oh man. Yeah. How much time do we have?
Do you have like a aha moment?
Yeah, I've got a few aha moments. I think the one that is probably the most profound in my life, and I'll kind of give a quick context for it. But toward the end of my college career, I wouldn't label myself as a Christian or anyone that followed Jesus or anything close to that. Was doing my best to get away from Jesus and church people. And I was working at a law firm at the time while I was still going to school, and the one of the law partners of the law firm had also been my criminal law professor, and so we had a good relationship. I really looked up to him. He was like the dude that I wanted to emulate myself after in so many ways, and he happened to be a Christian. Well, during that same time, my dad had passed away. My girlfriend at the time we were living together, she ended up hooking up with my best friend in college. And so I went through, I had 2 suicide attempts, and I arrived late for work one day at the law firm. And I knew that Kurt, the law partner, was supposed to be due in court. So I thought I could roll in late, not be a big deal. And I was pulling up to the office, and he was standing outside on the curb, and he had tears in his eyes. And I'm just like, what in the world? What happened? And so I get out of the car, park the car, get out of the car, and walk to the front of the office. And he's there with tears in his eyes, and he just grabs me and just gives me like this incredible embrace. And with tears in his eyes, he said, like, man, I don't know whether to like hug you and tell you I love you or to just kick your ass. And I go like, what are you talking about? And so what had happened, actually the night before, I had my second suicide attempt, and paramedics, a friend had come over after work unexpectedly, got there. I was unconscious on the floor. Paramedics came. For whatever reason, the paramedics that night decided to like get me in a situation where they felt like I was okay and not a danger to myself, but they didn't like take me into the hospital or anything. But that paramedic that night was actually a high school classmate of the lawyer that I worked for. Mm-hmm. And he had called him at home. And the only reason he even knew is because I had some letterhead from the law office on my desk at home. And so he called and told Kurt, the lawyer, this, and like, here was this guy that was just someone that I wanted to emulate on so many levels. And I had never seen him be emotional in that way before. So that was like this first experience of like God's love for me. And then from there, I just like started to explore what that looked like. I had to get over a lot of things like guilt and shame and worthlessness that I had been like carrying around with me since childhood.
That is really powerful.
Wow. Well, thank you. Yeah.
I'm glad that you were able to have faith guide you through that.
Thank you. Me too.
In your life. And I think that's going to be such a light to so many other people.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you for sharing your journey with us.
My
today.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, everybody. This is Aiden Lopes signing off. The part of Mr. Kleffer's faith that stood out to me the most while I was interviewing him was the fact that even though he had all these terrible and tragic events happen, most people in a similar circumstance could have turned away from God or felt like God had abandoned him. But Mr. Kleffer, instead, even being a man, even being a non-Christian, he turned to God, and these horrible events led him closer to God. In addition, he developed a relationship with Jesus when he came from a very skeptical and non-Christian household.